You ever buy something and it's like the best thing that you've ever bought, your favorite thing ever? When you get it, the day you get it, it's like Christmas morning? That's this for me, and today we're gonna be talking about it.
There no lack of the chemistry, I'm really fucking with all of your energy. Highly pursued, but I don't let it get to me. They say the start of us might be the end of me. I don't read minds, but I see signs. Johnny and June and we walking the line. Remember you best with a streak of some bomb for the spring. I got hella respect for you doing your thing. Couple of drinks, we get drunk off the Jama.
So I've had this camera for about 2 weeks now, and oh my God, it is good. It is the best camera that I've ever used, which makes sense because it's kind of the most expensive camera I've ever used. Like I said in my last video that I made doing an unboxing and kind of overview of my initial impressions of this camera, it is my baby. If you haven't watched that yet, if you want to see an unboxing, watch that before you watch this because it's a really good video that kind of shows you my initial thoughts around the camera. And now I'm going to be giving you my thoughts after owning it for like 2 weeks. So like I said, it does pretty much everything that I'd need it to and more, but is this camera worth $8,000 Canadian, $6,000 USD? Am I happy with my purchase after having it for about 2 weeks and actually really being able to use it, although I haven't used it on a client shoot yet? If you've been considering this camera at all or any similar cameras like the RED Komodo, the Canon C70, even I guess the Blackmagic 6K would kind of be in a similar category to this thing. This video is for you. I'm gonna be telling you why I picked it over those cameras, why I picked this in general, some of the different features and everything, and what it's actually like to use. This isn't gonna be an extremely nerdy technical overview, although I am a nerd, but it is gonna be kind of an overview on why this camera and why not another camera and how we could use this tool to make better videos, make more money, and be more efficient. So before going over like the review of this, the overview, the specs, the technical stuff, I want to put you in my shoes for a second and tell you what I need a camera for and kind of, you know, what I look at when evaluating if I want to purchase something for my business or for myself. What do I need a camera for? Well, I have a video production company that's solely myself. In that, I do a lot of solo shooting. I work with different freelancers sometimes, but a lot of the time it's just me, myself, and I creating videos for corporations, businesses, etc. I also do photography and I use my A7R Mark III for that, but I wanted a camera that I could use by myself without like a first assistant or anything pulling focus, that was really easy to use. I don't have to screw on stuff all the time. I don't have to rig it out too much. Something that's just pretty much a package that I can take, I could use, I could make beautiful videos with that suits my needs and you know, gives me a cinematic filmic picture that I'm very happy with at the end of the day. So some of the big things that I really wanted in a camera were built-in NDs, which this has. This actually has probably the best ND filter system in any camera ever, other than the other cameras that Sony makes that have the same system. I'm gonna talk about this more in depth, but it has an auto ND function, so you literally don't have to do anything. It does the ND filters for you. It's also got a variable ND function, or you could do different stops with ND presets, which most cameras, like I think the C70 or the new Blackmagic, would have different preset levels. So it's like you're putting on a different ND filter every time kind of thing. So that was a big thing that I needed. Now, when I first started shooting video, I bought this A7R Mark III because it shot 120 frames per second. So I really wanted something that shot decent slow-mo without cropping in or anything at a high resolution. So this shoots 120 frames per second in 4:2:2 10-bit color at 4K. That's amazing. I don't use slow motion as much as I used to, but when you have it, it's really nice to use and it looks beautiful in my opinion. It makes everything look dreamy and just awesome. The other thing, and the reason why I picked this over maybe like a RED Komodo or a Blackmagic camera, is I like autofocus. Is it so bad to like autofocus? Yes, I pull focus. I use manual focus a lot, and this camera has a really cool manual focus system where you could use autofocus and then pull manual focus and it'll stay. It's a very good implementation of manual autofocus together. I like autofocus. I like face autofocus. I like eye detect autofocus. It's an amazing tool to use if you're running on a gimbal, if you're filming a video like this yourself, or if you're just running and gunning and you want to get a face focused without having to pull and you're kind of moving around. Like, it's just a really good feature to have, and this camera does it so perfectly that I would say you don't need to even manually focus that often, even though I still do to make sure everything's tack sharp. It's just so good. I can't get over how good this is. All right, so now let's actually talk about the camera. Let's talk about the features. Let's talk about the specs. Let's talk about everything that this bad boy has inside of its tiny body. So this is the body itself. It's extremely light. It is a little plasticky feeling even though it looks metal, but I'm very happy with the size and kind of the overall small form factor of this. We have a 4K full frame sensor, a very similar sensor, if not the exact same as the A7S Mark III. This does 4K in cinema DCI, which I don't really care about because I'm just going to use the regular modes most of the time. It does, like I said, frame rates up to 120 frames per second in 4K. All of those different frame rates and modes are in 4:2:2 10-bit color, which is amazing. This shoots a cinetone, which is something that people really love. I think it's an amazing picture profile. It looks great, but I want the dynamic range from S-Log3. I did some tests, and the dynamic range difference, in my opinion, is quite big. So the dynamic range rated for this camera is about 15 plus stops, and it's really good. It gives a really filmic look. The colors are amazing. S-Cinetone's great if you have a quick turnaround, but I'm gonna use S-Log3 most of the time. 240 frames at 1080p, which is pretty cool. I haven't used that yet. Now the camera also does shoot 16-bit RAW externally, and they just updated the other day to shoot 120 frames per second in 16-bit RAW. So that's amazing. It's so cool that it can do that. I'm probably not gonna be using that because I don't want that post-production process, even though it's very nice to have and it's nice to have that information in post. I've never worked with RAW footage, so I really don't know what that would look like, and I don't wanna buy an external recorder because I just don't think I'm gonna use it. The other reason why I wouldn't use RAW with this camera is because we can use Catalyst Browse. So this camera has a gyro stabilizer sensor thing in here that captures the different movements that you're making with the camera to be able to stabilize that in Catalyst Browse, which is Sony software in post-production. I've done some tests on this, and it's a really good software. Implementation is quite decent. It gives kind of like a weird jitter, but it works a lot better than I would say Warp Stabilizer does. If you get pretty smooth images from this, like on a gimbal or something like that, it's gonna stabilize it fairly well, and I've been very happy with the results. It crops in quite a bit, but you can manually adjust that to bring it out a bit. I think it crops in a little bit too much automatically, but it's a great software. Catalyst Browse is really nice for looking through footage. You could also color grade the footage in Catalyst Browse, so if you want to look at your S-Log3 footage, it isn't just in log. You could also throw a LUT on it to see what it looks like. One thing I noticed is I've been using SD cards with this camera, and SD cards, if you're reading the footage right off the SD card, the file sizes are too big for the transfer speeds of the SD card. I've just been transferring it over to my solid state drive and then viewing the Catalyst Browse images or videos from there, and it works fine. So in S-Log3, we have a base ISO of 800 and a second higher sensitivity ISO of 12,800. So they say it's not a dual native ISO because even though it really is, there's a little bit less information from the 12,800 to where they're really nitpicky and they don't want to call it dual native, but it pretty much has two base ISO settings of 800 and 12,800. Okay, so like I talked about previously, my favorite feature by far of this beautiful camera is the ND filters that come in it. So these ND filters come on, you can click them with the button here, and you could either do presets, so different hard stops of ND, or you could change it to the variable ND, and in the variable, you could change it to auto ND, which almost perfectly works, exposing your image using a built-in like light meter to kind of tell where and how much ND it should apply. It works fairly flawlessly. I was testing it outside and I didn't love some of the results when it was kind of going from a bit more sky to a bit more dark. It was changing the actual exposure of the image. So I would probably run just the ND variable here. I think that works amazingly. You could dial it in, and then if you need to change your scene, you could just dial it up or down more. Down is less ND, up is more ND. It's amazing. It's basically like using a variable ND filter on the front of your lens, but it's built in. You do not have to screw on ND filters onto your lens. That is my biggest gripe when shooting video with mirrorless cameras. Built-in ND filters is something that since I started shooting video, I've wanted, and I think it is the best, most professional, efficient feature that you could have in a camera. And I don't really think you could call a camera a cinema camera without built-in NDs because they're just, once you have them, I don't think I'll be able to shoot like with a cinema camera without them. And this is the best implementation of built-in ND filters that I've seen in any camera. Now this has pretty much the same autofocus as the FX9 did. It's not very similar to the A7S III from what I've heard. From some of the different reviews on the FX6 that I've watched, such as Gerald Undunn's, people have been saying that the A7S III actually has better autofocus. The features are better. You could use the screen better. Philip Bloom said the same thing. I haven't really had any issues with the autofocus. It's been pretty awesome and the best autofocus I've ever used from a camera in my personal opinion. It has eye tracking and face tracking that works almost flawlessly. There's some hiccups some of the time, but it's a computer system. Of course, that's gonna happen. Yay. One of my favorite features is when you have a lens attached, you can rack focus manually and when it's in autofocus mode, and it will actually let you change the focus and stay there and then keep the autofocus on that subject. This is awesome if you kind of want to just quickly tell the camera where to go without having to go touch screen or go into any menus. You just kind of change it if you know what you're doing when you're pulling your focus, and it works awesome. This is the top handle. I really like this top handle. At the bottom of it, there's a little like electronic female insert, and it goes into a male insert at the top of the camera so that you have the XLR connectivity and all of the controls on the top handle into the camera. There's a little plastic piece here that just sticks at the bottom. There's little guides, and you just plop that in on top, and then these are spring-loaded. I really like the top handle on this. There's a couple things that I don't love. There's a couple things that I love. Just to talk about some of the features of it quickly, it has a record button, a hold button, 2 programmable buttons, a kind of toggle button, and then an iris control or whatever. You can change the wheel to be whatever you want it, and then a zoom rocker. Very cool, lots of functionality. If you're holding it top handle way, to get stable footage, it works really well. You also have 2 XLR ports up here. I don't love the way that this is here, shotgun microphone holder. I wish that you could take it off if you wanted to. The other problem with this is there's only 2 XLR ports on the entire camera. There's nothing on the body. There's no 3.5mm jack on the body at all. There is a headphone jack, 3.5mm headphone jack here, which I hope in maybe a firmware update they'll be able to like change that to be able to use as like a microphone, because right now if you take the top handle off, you have no audio other than this dinky little scratch audio right here, which just, this is the only thing that I actually don't like about the camera, the implementation of audio. Other than that, I pretty much have no complaints with the whole camera. That is my biggest complaint, so it is what it is. That being said, the handle is really nice. It feels great when you're holding it. It is kind of like dad with a handy cam vibes, like it's a little weird looking, but I really like the way that it works, and we can screw the monitor onto it. So this is the monitor. It has the hood on top of it, which is really nice that it comes with this little hood. The hood's kind of cheap and plastic, and these like buckles that hold it on top, they just suck. But it's nice that it was included because it protects it if you're storing it, and you need this in sunlight because this monitor is not bright enough to see in like direct sunlight. So that helps a little bit with being able to read and see your exposure on the screen. Now the monitor plugs into the camera, and it has this little rosette kind of locking arm thing that connects then to a connection on the monitor to go into place. It is like movable. It's actually really nice, and you could rotate it so you could see yourself the other way. It works really well. It's a little small, and the resolution on it isn't, you know, the best ever, but it works. I usually like to put it kind of at the front of the handle here. So the nice thing about the monitor though is there's different kind of rosette locking areas throughout the camera. So you can use the back here or the back of the handle, kind of change up wherever you want to put the monitor depending on your preference. Another thing that I really like about this top handle is there is different, and on the body as well, there's different like cable runways so that you could nicely throw your cables through here like so that they're not dangling everywhere. And then it just plugs in on the side, and you get a nice little thing. Now you have a monitor, yay. So like I said, the monitor is not the best ever. It works well, I'm happy that it has it. It has an assignable button here, which I use to change kind of the view on the monitor, and then it's got a zebra and a peaking button on the side. I think these are programmable, so you can change them if you wanted to. Batteries the camera uses are the BPU batteries. I'm pretty sure all of the other Sony Cinema cameras use these. I've found it to be quite good for runtime. It just goes in the back, and it has like a little lock and release. You could get bigger batteries, smaller batteries if you want. They're a little expensive. I wanted to buy another one right away, and then I was like, wait. You could also, it's got DC in, so you could run a V-mount battery if you wanted to, but the batteries have decent life. One of my favorite things about this camera is the handle. It is awesome. This handle is so good. It's got a toggle on it so you can run through menus. It's got a record button. It's got a direct menu button. So 2 programmable buttons, one's used for the direct menu, one's used for focus magnification. It's got an iris control rocker as well, and a zoom rocker. And then it's got this release that lets you switch it throughout the camera. So I'm gonna put it in. You kind of lock it in like you would a lens on the front of the camera. It's got a little point. You just plug the grip in through this little, this is also like a 3.5mm audio jack. This is exactly what it looks like. So the grip plugs in nicely. The one thing that kind of threw me off when I first got the camera was that the grip has some play to it. Like, can you hear that? That's not like a great noise on your $8,000 camera. I think it's because it has this release so you could move this in whatever way you like, which I love. I love being able to like do different stuff with it however I want to. A little unsettling, although I'm sure it's fine. I don't think it's gonna fall off or anything, and if it does, I'm screwed then. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen then. One really nice thing about the grip is it fits amazingly in your hand. It's super comfortable. I have tiny hands, and it's great, like little tiny Trump hands, but I fit great into this like a glove. It's amazing. And then this thingy, this little holder thingy, and then this like Sony branded strap, handle strap. It is so nice. It just keeps you secure in there. If somebody's running by to steal your camera, they take it and you got your handle straight. You're good. You're good. So I want to run through some of the I/O and some of the buttons, etc. on the camera. We have a full HDMI port on the back. We have an SDI out. We have time code in and out. We have a remote, which is basically a mini USB at the back here, and then we have DC in. We have a USB-C port at the very back of the camera here, on/off button. We have our media port, which is the exact same as the A7S III. It takes SD cards in CFast Type A. We have our battery in the back, and then we switch over here. This is where all the fun stuff is. So we have our audio channels, we have our slot select, which I've never used. This is the headphone in jack. We have our different white balance presets. We have our different exposure presets on these little toggle switches, which I absolutely love. We have 3 different programmable buttons. First one is slow and quick. We keep it that way. 2 others, which I program a certain way. We have a display button, iris control, variable ND buttons all up here, back, cancel, thumbnail, full menu. So to get to the menu, they have a quick menu, which you can press once and then get into the touchscreen menu, which is supposed to be quicker to kind of go through stuff. I don't use this one that often. And then you hold it and you get into the regular menu. On the front of the camera, we have just like another dial to get through menus, and you can press in and kind of go through. It's kind of weird. I don't love it. I don't hate it. You have your focus, auto manual. This is for push auto. So if you're in manual focus, you hold this and it auto focuses for you, which is also really cool. And you have your white balance set on the bottom. And then we have our full frame E-mount right at the front. So now some of the initial impressions when I got this camera were that there was a bit of a transition from going from mirrorless to this. One of them because you could shoot in custom mode or you could shoot in Cine EI mode. On a regular camera, you'd kind of like pick a picture profile and just shoot in custom manual mode. But with this, it's a little different. So shooting in Cine EI works similar to shooting traditional film cameras. There's only the 2 base exposures. So you have 800 and 12,800 on the ISO, and it's only an S-Log3. So that's to preserve the most dynamic range possible. And then on there, you have exposure indexes, which basically change the exposure on the LUT that you're viewing, but doesn't actually change the exposure to your base setting. This was a lot to learn at first. It's actually not that confusing. It's pretty straightforward. It just didn't really make sense because I wasn't used to it. Now that I understand it, it's the way to go because I like shooting S-Log3. Now you can shoot S-Log3 in custom mode, but you can't put a monitor LUT when you're using custom mode, so it's useless to me because I want to see a Rec 709 or a certain type of LUT that I'm going to use on the monitor so I know how to expose correctly, and you can't do that in custom mode. The only way I could think to do around this is put your own monitor on and program a LUT and display that LUT in custom mode. So custom mode's really for shooting S-Cinetone, and then if you want to shoot S-Log3, which I think a lot of people buying this camera are going to do, you want to use Cine EI. Now, MLUTs are what kind of displays over top of that. It has a couple programmed in there, which you could use, or you could upload your own LUTs, which isn't that hard to do. That is the way that I've been using it. And then with S-Log3, you kind of want to shoot like 1.5 to 2 shots overexposed so you could bring down those highlights, etc. So you could color grade it in post. That was the biggest learning curve and just understanding kind of the differences between the cinema camera. But once I got over that, and if you have a basic understanding of how to properly expose an image, how a camera works, all these different things, it's actually pretty straightforward to use. But it's not like, you know, I give somebody a mirrorless camera, they hit record, and all the auto functions are on it. This is a camera that you need to understand what you're doing to do. And it's just kind of like a wake-up call to be like, holy shit, like there's so much that goes into creating videos. But at the end of the day, I really love this camera. The pictures that you get out of it are incredible, and I'm super happy with my purchase. I don't think there's another camera that can do anything even close to what this can do. Yes, I've thought about the A7 III. I'm probably still gonna buy one, but the built-in NDs are the biggest game changer for me using this camera. And for a lot of professional people that need time code, SDI, this is a no-brainer for them, right? The biggest downside is the sensor is not stabilized like the A7S III, because I think like to fit an ND filter in here, it's almost impossible to have a stabilized sensor as well, and both of those things in such a tiny body, it's just not possible yet with our current technology. That's what I've heard. Is that true? I don't know. I don't build cameras. I just use them. So who knows if that's true or not. I love this thing, and you know, if you have the money, if you have a profitable production company, this is not for any YouTubers. although you can kind of vlog on it, which I have, and I'll show some footage of that. This is a professional camera for professional intentions. It's crazy that the A7S III is so similar in like a prosumer body. If you want autofocus and built-in NDs, this is like the way to go for its price point, and just honestly any cinema camera right now. I don't know, other than the C70, that's a great camera, but it's Super 35. I know you can buy an adapter to make it full frame, etc. But this is the best camera in my opinion. And Sony's colors have come a long way and they look amazing. Just as good, if not better than Canon now. And the autofocus is just as good, if not better than Canon. Probably better than Canon. I do recommend this. I think it's worth every penny. Sony has 0% financing if you want to pick one of these up for your company. And it makes it a little bit affordable because it's like free money when you're financing for 0%. I was gonna do it outright, and then I just decided might as well finance it because it's not that expensive. So if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. I think like 99% of people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. It just makes me feel better when I see that new subscriber every day. And like the video if you found some value. It really does actually help a lot with how the video plays in the algorithm. If you guys do that, I'll keep making these videos for you. Yeah, awesome. I'm sorry. I'm so excited about this camera, and I can't wait to shoot some more content on it coming up. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Let me know who, let me know who, let me know who, yeah, baby, if you love me, let it show, let it show.